Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos y gracias por
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Allow me to welcome you to the side event on the advances on the hydrogen, green hydrogen and derivatives agenda in Uruguay in the event of an activity organized by the Interinstitutional Green Hydrogen H2U event supported by the European Union, the German International Cooperation Agency, the GIZ, and the IDB, which aims at informing and updating on the advances of the implementation on the roadmap for green hydrogen and its derivatives of Uruguay, which was launched a little over a year ago. We are honored to be part of this event, which is framed within the 8th Energy Week of Olade and the first investments forum for Latin America and the Caribbean for the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. These events are significant and are taking place in the city of Montevideo during this week. I would like to welcome especially the authorities here, Robert Bouvier, Minister of Environment, and Verde, which is the Subsecretary for Industry and Mining, also different authorities of national and international institutions, ambassadors, and foreign guests. I would also like to welcome the professional industrial chambers and commercial chambers, technicians, people from academia, international and institutional personalities, and the general audience. Thank you for being with us today. I would also like to say hello to those of you connected online as this event is being live streamed. To kick off the event, I would like to give the floor to the Subsecretary of Industry, Mining and Energy, Walter Berry. Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being patient. For those of you that are not from here, welcome to Uruguay. We sincerely hope that you have a happy stay in our land and that you get the best impression of our country, and we hope that we can be the hosts that you deserve. To the Uruguayans in the room, which are many and that have filled this room, thank you for participating in this Energy Week and this investment fund organized by IRENA. For us, it's an important event. You know that celebrating IRENA's 50th anniversary in Uruguay is important because it acknowledges our country as a country that is at the forefront in renewables and that we have a lot yet to develop. Decarbonizing our economies is a common goal of all the countries here represented. Latin America and the Caribbean have a great potential when it comes to overcoming this global issue. The model of dependency of developed countries, well, they have realized that it has resulted in uncertainty, economic and social instability, let alone when there are wars at place. Our region has been called to have a leading role in the issue of renewables on the global landscape. You know that Uruguay is a green country. In some of its aspects, we have managed to go through the first energy transition, which did not start with this government, but the previous offices were first. Some acts were passed, regulatory frameworks were given, and then after 2010, with different parties involved, we started installing renewable energies, in particular funded by the private sector, allowing for what we could say today was the first energy transition. And Uruguay is one of the very few countries around the world whose electric energy is 100% renewable. For a couple of years, and fundamentally since Minister Paganini took office in the ministry, who being in the Chancellor's office, in the Foreign Affairs office, is an honor for him, but we are missing him greatly at the Ministry of Industry because we have worked so well over the last couple of years. But we could say that we initiated the second energy transition where green hydrogen plays a key role. We created a multidisciplinary team integrated by different ministries, led by our ministry, by Engineer Gonzalez, and she will be the one that will be updating you with regards to the roadmap. I'm just giving a few opening remarks. But we have set the bar high. Uruguay depends on fossils only around 40%. It was said by someone that gave some opening words at the event's opening. Around the world, you have an average 80%, but in Uruguay, we have barely 40%. Still, we're trying to decarbonize the two sectors that are the hardest to decarbonize. We're talking about transportation, mobility, and the industry. So for that purpose, energy efficiency and electromobility are key pillars, and we are working in that sense. And we are also working to decarbonize that which is the hardest to decarbonize, and that is why we have developed this green hydrogen roadmap in a consultancy process funded by the IDB and our ministry. And that roadmap was put to public consultation. A number of workshops were conducted on top of meetings with representatives from different political parties and members of parliament, because we believe that that strength that our country has in that our policies are long-term state policies, and regardless of whether one party or another is ruling, which happens thanks to democracy, we may be able to allow that to exist over time. And we created that space for dialogue, and now we are assessing the legal tool that we will use to shape this green hydrogen roadmap that may be done through a decree, why not, but of course perhaps through an act that requires parliamentary approval, which is partly what will be discussed today. What we have clearly defined is that at first we will develop alternative fuels, whether it's aviation, maritime transportation, whether it's methanol, HUBO, different transition paths that we believe we need to develop. We are also working with national projects, some of which are being subsidized to a large extent by the country. Of course, the figures are according to the small country that we are, but that green hydrogen pilot program is being developed already, and it will decarbonize trucks for the transportation of timber, changing from combustion engines to hydrogen-based engines, which is going to have a subsidy of $10 million over a period of 10 years. We're thinking about the export market, the new hydrogen sector as well. The roadmap on which we have worked sets out that it would include, it would be for a total bill of $2 billion, creating 30,000 direct and indirect jobs. We have made alliances with countries in the region that have a strong bet on these technologies, and also countries like Germany and from the European Union. And we are certain that as a region we will be able to leverage this, and that's why we have so many challenges as a region when it comes to getting the certifications for this green hydrogen. And I believe that this event this week is probably going to be the reason why perhaps a few agreements will be signed. Just to give you a few numbers about Uruguay, but definitely the technicians that will follow me will do it in further detail. We have a huge potential when it comes to renewables. We can install 80 gigawatts in wind power and 200 for PV. On top of that, we have offshore generation, and for that, ANCAP is working a lot on this. Also, the use of land, thinking about the landscape of 2040, where we'd be installing 9 gigawatts in wind power and PV. It would account for 0.7% of the total national territory and a bit less for PV. And why am I saying this now? Because this implies a social impact, and as people are concerned about the development of green hydrogen, it's important to address these things. So the next steps to keep on making progress on this green hydrogen route, well, it means that we need to define our capabilities, we need to regulate investments, we need to talk about infrastructure, and what I just said, in how we address this together with the citizenship. But again, the technicians will be addressing this in further detail. For us as a country and for Latin America as a region and for the Caribbean, green hydrogen is clearly something that we need to work on together as it has great potential. Thank you so much for being here.
Agradecemos al vice.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister Verdi. Now we would like to ask Robert Bouvier to take the floor.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. First of all, I apologize for my delay. I will be quite brief so that you can continue with the technical conferences. We are here to update the strategy of Uruguay regarding green hydrogen. First of all, I would like to highlight the commitment of the government of Uruguay to promote and develop the green hydrogen program that strengthens our position in the transition towards a more sustainable and environmentally friendly energy. As for the presidential decree, we established the green hydrogen program with several ministries with the objective of fostering the development of these technologies in our country. The main axes of this program are innovation, regulation, attracting investment, generating capacities, international cooperation, infrastructure, logistics, and the offshore production and communications. The Ministry of the Environment has been involved very actively in this energy transition, working with different technical areas that guarantee the protection of the environment and sustainable development of our country. We are strengthening our internal capacities and defining environmental criteria to implement different programs of green hydrogen and derivatives, looking at the sustainability of the resources, especially water. Our country has a legal framework which is very solid, and we have an experience of 30 years in implementation, which gives us a significant advantage for evaluating the different projects related to green hydrogen. Also, we highlight the experience acquired in environmental control and wind plants and photovoltaic plants, which are crucial to implement these major projects for green hydrogen and derivatives. It's fundamental to highlight that this program is aligned with our climate change programs, where we have established specific objectives to develop and have regulations together with our roadmap of green hydrogen, also including vehicles of green hydrogen cells in the framework of the Paris Accord. I trust that this week in our discussions we will move forward in our strategy on green hydrogen, and we will consolidate Uruguay as a key player in its transition of cleaner energy. And I wish you all a very successful event, and I also wish to welcome all the foreigners who are here with us today. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, ministro.
Thank you very much, Minister Bouvier. Now, we will invite to the floor Engineer Maria Jose Gonzalez, coordinator of the Green Hydrogen Program and advisor of MIEM, who will be presenting the roadmap of green hydrogen and derivatives in Uruguay. Thank you.
Me traje hinchada.
Thank you for being here. I apologize we don't have chairs for everyone, but it's very important for us that you are here. And this is part of this strategy of informing and being transparent with our progress as we move forward in this roadmap of hydrogen. We want to inform you what we're doing, what progress we're making. Sometimes we can have more news, sometimes less, but we will always be informing you. Very well. I'm distracted by the screen behind me. Okay, we have a lot of experts here. I apologize, but I have to review this because there are a lot of people here, and maybe some of you, it's the first time you're hearing about this, so I'll be very quick on this. Why green hydrogen? Why Uruguay? We want to strengthen this idea.
Les hago el cuento. Si no, siguiente. A ver, las metas, el mundo...
The world has set different long-term objectives and different scenarios. Here we see possible scenarios regarding the reduction of emissions. In order to lower this is a very ambitious program, 2%, 1.5%, and for this we require great efforts. And among the sector that requires this the most is the energy sector. We have done great efforts at a global level. Uruguay has done great efforts also, but we continue to have a very high level of fossil energy. So using renewable energy, thankfully in Uruguay, we've already gone through the first phase very successfully, but we still have at a global level the need to decarbonize not only the electric sector, but others also. And here is where hydrogen takes place, because hydrogen can allow us to decarbonize sectors where it is much more difficult to use renewable energy directly. First we use renewable energy and then we go to the hard-to-beat sectors, the sectors where it doesn't make sense, and hydrogen is possible to be used. Hydrogen is also part of our long-term climate strategy. Uruguay has committed to some objectives. This is the profile of the energy sector, what we could do. In the light color, that's what would happen with the emissions if we don't do anything, but you can see that our ambition is very big, so we have to go through this Uruguay plan. Why hydrogen? Why can we use hydrogen for this? Well, we have some advantages because we can use it directly, but also through derivatives. We can use hydrogen in transportation to move electric vehicles, also for combustion, also for storing and generating more energy, and using our own electric grid, power grid. We can also have natural gas grids. We can also use it for industrial means of different industries, for green steel also, but also we can combine this hydrogen with other molecules such as CO2 that comes from a chimney, and then we can produce other products, alcohols, fuels, ammonia, lots of other things that we can use for aviation, for maritime means, for raw materials of the industrial sector to transport hydrogen from one place to another. So when we want to design a roadmap, we find this scenario. Uruguay has the potential, we have the need, and we have all these possible uses. And that's why at a global level, we have hydrogen on the table. It's the molecule, it's the key element to reach all decarbonization, which we have set at a global level as our objective. And why for Uruguay? Why does it make sense for Uruguay? Because if it's in the world, it makes sense for Uruguay. First of all, because of this figure. We've talked about this before today. Can you imagine we're going to discuss this throughout the week? We have more than 94% of renewables. Nearly all Uruguayans have electrical energy. And this makes sense now. If we have more renewable energy, we have more sun, more wind, what can we do with this? Because we've already satisfied our demand, what Uruguayans need, and that is our main priority. So for Uruguay, it's a natural step to start talking about hydrogen. It's a natural step because we've already taken the first steps and we've had very good results. And this 40% is what we are lacking to decarbonize transportation. And there we have the Ministry of Transportation. All energy that we produce must be used in the most efficient manner. We must promote electric mobility. We can certify also the energy that we develop, but there are some sectors that we won't reach because, like heavy load vehicles, And hydrogen for our domestic market started to make sense many years ago, and we were already starting to discuss this topic. But in the global context, also, this became stronger, and we started seeing countries that were going to need hydrogen, and they didn't have the resources to produce hydrogen. Those were importing countries, importers of hydrogen, and all the countries in Latin America were going to be able to be exporters of hydrogen. And suddenly we have a geopolitical situation which is different. And Uruguay starts to have a new opportunity, which 15 years ago we didn't have. And here we can see, if we would like to reach scenario 1.5, all the demands for hydrogen from 2022 to 2040, how much would that hydrogen demand increase? It would be a lot, a very large demand for hydrogen shared throughout in a global manner, but also announcements at a global level. This is a report from IEA. It came out some weeks ago. All the announcements of production of hydrogen and derivatives. So the whole world is on this path. This morning we talked about it's a matter of getting there first. So hydrogen is a key matter in all the projects because there's a great opportunity throughout the world. That's why we insist on this.
So in that context, why for Uruguay first, for our market, but also because it may be the path for a more sustainable growth. This could be an opportunity in Uruguay to promote economic development that will contribute to the three legs of sustainability, the ones that we know really well for many years: social, environmental, and economic aspects. In the social sense, because you can generate jobs, you can foster development in the rest of the country, not in the capital. The biggest potential is in the northern part of the country, where you also need to have the right conditions. And also for capacity building issues, having technicians, people that may learn how to manage a new product, a new industry or sector. From the economic point of view, of course, this would be a production sector that would add local value. The hydrogen roadmap is specifically through the derivatives where we find it has the biggest sense, and that means value that is added to the hydrogen molecule, and therefore a new economic activity that will draw investments, promote exports, and of course bring innovation. That is a very strong aspect as well. Well, also the environmental issue is key. It doesn't make sense to talk about hydrogen if we don't do it sustainably. Hydrogen is the result of an environmental need, and so it's going to help us to decarbonize our energy mix. It's going to allow us to decarbonize other production sectors such as the dairy industry, the meat industry. If the transportation that we are using requires fossil fuels, is making it lose a lot of its positive attributes. So it could really help us leverage these sectors, and why not make the port of Montevideo part of a green corridor where you can do bunkering with green fuels for international transportation. These are the reasons why we believe that hydrogen is much more than investment. It's a development opportunity with the possibility of being very successful and very sustainable, and that's why Uruguay is so invested. So why choose Uruguay to invest? Well, I think that many of you know, because we talk about these four pillars when we talk about hydrogen: political, institutional, and legal stability, renewables, the availability of biogenic CO2, and the logistic conditions. And I just want to zoom in, giving you a couple of new data related to the potential of renewables and CO2. Here is a map that was not on the previous roadmap, which is CO2 availability. In green you can see wind power and the potential that Uruguay has for PV as well, much more than we are proposing for the roadmap, but also the availability of biogenic CO2 that we have at the national level. And in this case, at a very small proportion, we have inevitable CO2, the fossil CO2 that in international jargon also begins to be on the table as that kind of CO2 that you just can't avoid. For example, when we work with cement, you need to use limestone, and you can't change that, and you're generating CO2. And that is also part of the international debate related to hydrogen derivatives. So it's a very interesting condition, the one that we have in Uruguay. And they are really close to one another, and that is why Uruguay is choosing to focus on its roadmap, especially on hydrogen derivatives. So quickly going over what has been so far the building process of this roadmap. Okay, first let's talk about participation. We started at the beginning with a consultancy process with support by the IDB and McKinsey, a consulting company that gave us the possibility to conduct 3 workshops that took place during the pandemic. They were online with 3 discussion panels. We would present data. We would have a discussion until we got to a proposal that was presented before the CONICET, which is the Science and Technology Committee in Uruguay, before it was put to public consultation. And a little over a year ago, I think it was July last year, that we launched it. On the 14th of June, it was launched. It was made available on the website, and that was open for anyone that wanted to make a comment and send it to us by email. After that, we worked with workshops, in particular with written documents, so that people could make comments to it, contributions. We worked with the private sector, academia, the civil society, and as Mr. Verrier was saying, we made presentations with the very minister to different political authorities, conventions in parliament, representatives. So we always sought to keep on building different inputs that we could use to generate the final version. And then we had this version, which is a bit of a guideline to what is coming. One of the things that we understood we needed to prioritize was the message of Uruguay having its greatest potential around the international market with methanol and aviation and maritime fuels. And we also talk about methanol because it's something that you use in the chemical industry, which is not just its use as fuel. And for the domestic sector, when it comes to heavy long-distance transportation and heavy trucks that cannot be electrified at the beginning, but let's see where technology takes us, and why not producing fertilizers as well. So how do you define the goals that I will present you with now? So what did we take into account? First and foremost, resource availability in the country. The main resource for hydrogen production is water, so how much water will be used to produce hydrogen was something that was on the table from the beginning, and it was part of the consultation process. The main concerns that we've received so far has been around the resource of water, which is absolutely understandable, and we decided to present it in a clearer way in the final draft for the document. We showed that the volumes of water compared to other uses that Uruguay makes of water is relatively minor, and it wouldn't be affecting or compromising the water resources in the country. Another thing that we've been working on, and Rosario will tell us more about it, is how you can manage that in space and time. Water resources in Uruguay is about how you manage it, where you get them from, how you get them, and thankfully we have water in abundance in our country, but we need to manage it properly. And we know, well, we're talking about this, which accounts for less than 0.7% of the water that is used for irrigation in agriculture. But land use was also another concern. So the goals that we have was 9 gigawatts for wind power and PV, also connected to land use, because the potential of wind power is greater, but we limited it so that it makes sense compared to other industries at the national level. And then logistics. We have ports. Do we have ports for these products? What are the current conditions of these ports? Do we have the necessary roads and infrastructure to work with hydrogen derivatives? And that took us from direct use and derivatives when it comes to hydrogen to a priority level that we had to discuss. So much so that we had a first stage in this roadmap, and we're going through it nowadays, which consisted of the implementation of a pilot program, developing regulations, and begin with citizen dialogues. Another thing that we noticed is that we also need to work with the citizenship in our territory, also with academia, the private sector, and the civil society. We've even conducted workshops with the press in this sense. We understand that between 2026 and 2030 we could have the first methanol productions, and eventually fuels for aviation, but hydrogen derivatives would start only after that. And after 2030, with a world that has a clearer landscape of how these markets are going to develop, we could, why not, include other products. But broadly speaking, these are the main focuses that we've had so far. This is a chart that shows how significantly it's changed compared to the first version, especially when it comes to the domestic sector. We were a bit less ambitious. Perhaps we were being too ambitious, and we brought it a bit more down to earth, and we allowed it with the mid-term strategy, which is still ambitious. But now we're talking about a market of $540 million by 2040 and 3 gigawatts at the domestic level. When we talk about the international market, we're talking about derivatives such as ammonia, hydrogen, and maritime and aviation fuels, and we're talking about a market of 1.3 million and in the numbers of 6 gigawatts for the international market. How is this reflected in opportunities for Uruguay? Well, 9 gigawatts of power for electrolyzers, 18 renewable gigawatts, 1 million hydrogen tons, 18,000 dollars of projected investments. But we need to be realistic when it comes to these data. Also jobs, more than 30,000 in that sense. And of course, these markets of $1.3 billion, which is also significant. So in order to develop all of this and to bring this roadmap that you've seen, well, it hasn't significantly changed, but this H2U program that has that we mentioned at the beginning with all the different actors has begun to work in 5 main axes. First of all, capacity building, regulation, investments, infrastructure, and citizen dialogue. And we've worked on each of these axes. This is the agenda of what we are doing in each of these. And I don't want to go through them one by one, because luckily these will be presented by my colleagues that are part of this interinstitutional group. But just to tell you that we are making progress on each of them, whether it's environmental issues or specific hydrogen regulations that we are trying to develop, offshore competencies, all the capabilities that we have at UTE to generate hydrogen, and of course how we communicate this, how we can build a solid strategy to take this forward. So these will be further developed later. I just wanted to give you an overview of how in parallel we're trying to make progress in each of these axes. Also, and wrapping up, in the sole investment window that starts after, that will be enforced as of the 1st of January. It's for the time being in a very preliminary stage. Now it's just a reference list of files, but we want it to be more ambitious. Well, hydrogen is also included in that list. You see that it's quite new, but we also wanted hydrogen to be one of the main investment drawers as part of that list of investments. We have 3 announced projects. I won't go into too much detail. Luckily, these have been presented in several events, but just briefly, we have the HIF project, which is going to be in the department of Paysandú, the Tambor project in the department of Tacuarembó. Both deal with methanol production at a small and mid scale, and a pilot project that could be related potentially to heavy transportation for the forestry industry, which is also a part of this first stage of the pilot programs that I mentioned before, that receives government support, and therefore it's about meeting the goals that we set ourselves some time ago. Just to wrap up, so I can give the floor to someone else. I'm guessing that you're looking forward to it. I just wanted to thank a big team that has worked with this, a very solid team at the Ministry of Industry, also international affairs, all the different administrative areas, different state-owned companies. It would not have been possible without a very strong collaboration with technicians that also have to do other things apart from hydrogen. So they are strongly committed to taking this forward. And I especially wanted to thank each of them and the cooperation that we have received from the IDB, the World Bank, GIZ, CAF, the United Nations through the RAVE projects, and other institutions such as the Japanese and Korean corporations that have contributed with training programs. They have been key drivers in this transformation process that is allowing us to make progress. Then, of course, we will see what is left to do. We have so many challenges still to overcome. As you see, a lot to be done, but I didn't want to leave that unmentioned because we wouldn't have made it otherwise. That is for you to download the latest version of the roadmap. You've got the charts in the different booklets that you received, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Gonzalez, for a very clear presentation on the roadmap. And now we would like to invite two people to the stage. Engineer Eduardo Tuchá, the Manager of Fiscalization of Water and Energy Agency, URSEA, and Engineer Rosario Lucas, Manager of Impact Evaluation of the Ministry of the Environment, to open this conversation on the advances on the regulating agenda.
Ya. En primer lugar,
First of all, we would like to invite Eduardo Tuchá to take the floor. Good afternoon. This is the presentation of URSEA on hydrogen. The agenda will have the introduction, specific legal competence, and the situation. This presentation will be quite conceptual, not so detailed, and I will also be giving a cultural promotion, so if technology helps me, I'm going to put on some Uruguayan music to accompany this. I hope you can hear it. Okay, that was the introduction. Who? That's a song from Sylvia Meyer. The name of the song is Quien. Okay, who is URSEA? It's a regulating unit of energy and water services. So the origin is started in 1997. We created this regulation unit of electric energy, UREE, and it was created to regulate and control all activities related with electricity. Then in 2002, we extended the regulatory competence, creating the URSEA, and thus we included other sectors of energy, such as derivatives of oil, natural gas, drinking water, and later on we added other competencies, agrofuels, energy efficiency, security of vapor generators, solar energy. And another thing, in 2020, according to Law 19889, URSEA became a decentralized service giving greater autonomy. It was a institutional consolidation. And here we have the institutional framework that we have in URSEA. We have the two big sectors of energy and drinking water and sanitation. Here we have the legal framework. Then the policies that are defined by the executive power. We have the Ministry of Industry, Energy and Mining and the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of the Environment. In this framework of policies, URSEA sets its regulations, and the regulated agencies for energy, we have state companies and we have private companies. In the case of drinking water and sanitation, we have also the municipalities. These are the objectives of URSEA that can be summarized that the center of URSEA is the user and the consumer. Specific legal competency. Okay, this is not easy. This is mandato. That's the author of this song is Jorge Drexler. With the law 19996, we modified the objectives of URSEA, and there we established that URSEA will have the competency attributed by this law on the following activities and sectors. There we have the generation, distribution, transportation, storing, marketing and export of hydrogen. And also, in another article of this law, it also modifies it, and it says that the URSEA will have the following objectives and specific legal powers regarding hydrogen exclusively as a source of secondary energy. It will also comply with the specific sector regulations, and it would also have regulations for quality and security of products and services, and also of materials, facilities, and devices to be used. So we focus on quality and security. And now we will look at the situation. Okay, that's another song called Ahí Voy, and the authors, Buenos Muchachos. Very well, this is what Maria Jose mentioned. It's about the roadmap within the different objectives. We have regulation for 2024-2025, and in particular to establish regulation. Also, what's being done. We also talked about this. On the one hand, we are developing a consultancy on the regulatory needs for developing the green hydrogen market and derivatives. And this is being done with GIZ Germany and the leadership of MIEM. And we have representatives of URSEA who are participating in the counterpart team. And the objective of this consultancy, it's on the screen, and it's about identifying the regulations that already exist related with hydrogen, in particular those referred to security and technical aspects, and to establish the gap, what must be developed, and who does what. Identify the players in each of the topics that must be regulated. As we don't have much time, and the pilot project is one of the imminent topics, we needed to develop a framework on security. So apart from the consultancy, which is ongoing, we started working with URSEA on a proposal for having a regulation on security for hydrogen projects. We want to have a general regime to develop, for the projects to be developed for the production of hydrogen, and it includes facilities related to hydrogen for any of the stages of production, storing, distribution, consumption, and marketing. I won't go into detail here because it's an ongoing work, but the leaders of the projects that are presented must have international technical regulations. We will not be inventing anything else. We must be supported by international regulations. We are doing our proposal, the internal proposal. We've also had different meetings with DNE and MIEM and agents of the sector. We will soon be submitting a proposal to the Board of Directors of URSEA, suggesting to have a public consultation to receive all the contributions that we may have. We want to prepare a proposal and ask the sector, and before we make a regulation, we will have a public consultation. Typically, this would be 60 days of public consultation, and we hope to have this ready shortly so everybody can understand its contents and give us their contributions. After the public consultation, we will analyze the contributions and we will prepare the final project, and that will be submitted to the board of URSEA. Later, we will respond the contributions in a formal manner. We will approve the regulation, we will publish it and implement it. to clarify, this would be the first regulation on hydrogen in the framework of the legal competencies, and it will be complemented by new developments, looking at the results of the consultancy that is in progress and the actions that will be developed with the staff of URSEA. Here we have a need to strengthen our human resources with specific capacities, and also with external support and new consultancies, etc. Very well. That's all for today. Thank you.
Ahora seguimos con la...
Okay, now we will hear it from Rosario Lucas, engineer. Good afternoon. I don't have any kind of background music, so now it's a challenge to give my presentation without all the animations. The Minister of Environment, well, I'm representing the Ministry of Environment and the interinstitutional group that is working together with the Ministry of Industry that is creating this hydrogen roadmap. And I wanted to tell you, just like Ursula did, to talk about the competencies in the processes and how we are framing within this the advancements that we are making in our country to promote a green hydrogen and also its derivatives. The Minister of Environment, recently created by this office, has dealt with the environmental component was done by the Ministry of Housing back in the 90s, and it has vast competencies related to environmental matters. And I would like to highlight prevention and the control of environmental impact and an assessment of environmental quality, which is one of the main purposes of the ministry. And the challenge that concerns that comprises this, it's not just about the land, but also the exclusive economic zone, which, as you all know, we have several square kilometers on our territorial seas that also has to do with the protection of the environment and the ecosystems in that area. Within that general framework, we have Article 47 of the Constitution of the Republic that says that the protection of the environment is something of general interest, that everyone needs to refrain from polluting and depleting the environment. And we have a lot of regulations in that sense, because before the creation of the Ministry of Housing, there were some laws about how concerning the protection of the environment. The ones that are more directly related to hydrogen have to do with the Act for Environmental Assessment and its corresponding decree, and some other acts that are to some extent connected to the authorization of these investment projects once they are implemented in our country. And this has to do with the Territorial Planning and Sustainable Development Act. And why am I talking about this? Because this act also categorizes soils in our country, which is also something that concerns local departmental governments. And because of that categorization, you define where you can produce hydrogen, in what kind of soil, and where the generation of renewable energies are required to produce hydrogen. So it is of utmost importance to categorize the soil for energy, for hydrogen production, in particular concerning the industrial sector that has to take place in suburban category soils, and it cannot be rural. So many of the projects that are being devised nowadays, and some of which have even been submitted before the Ministry of Environment, well, before that you need to recategorize the soil where they are to be implementing and building the industrial plant. Regarding the environmental assessment, well, the Ministry of Housing will have been for 30 years next year in our country, and we in Uruguay have a regulatory framework to grant permits for the construction of these plants. When we started taking a look at this roadmap and considering all the regulations and the need of a country to make progress in these regulations, we saw that all the aspects connected to environmental permits were already framed in our national regulations, so we didn't need to do anything too specific, neither acts nor decrees to assess and grant the permits for these undertakings and these projects. So what is the aim of this tool that has been in place for several years in our country? Well, it's to assess the different projects, is to assess the environmental impact that could result from these projects. And when I talk about hydrogen projects, we're talking about both the specific hydrogen production and its derivatives, as well as the plants that will generate renewables, which are necessary to feed the hydrogen production plants. Also to define mitigation and compensation measures, to conduct environmental monitoring, to promote transparency and public participation in decision-making processes, which is another important issue due to how sensitive hydrogen development is in our country, and the very tool and the regulation already sets out public consultation stages and to positively contribute to sustainable development that is environmentally friendly. So what is the process in order to get the permits that will allow you to have a project up and running? Well, from the environmental perspective, you need to go through a series of steps, and that is a bit of a scheme of that process, that flow chart of the different stages that investors, and in this case the Ministry of Environment, have to go through. In blue, you have the responses or the assessments that the Ministry of Environment needs to take care of, and in red, the ones that correspond to the investor. We start with an assessment of the site and a communication to the Ministry of Environment. You need to consider things such as environmental viability, where it's going to be located, considering those environmental conditions that are not incompatible with the development of the project. The first thing that the ministry needs to assess is whether or not to grant that environmental viability in terms of its location by considering these different aspects, and then to classify that project. Once that project has that green light, the company needs to conduct environmental impact assessment, and this is something that I want to stress, and it helps us to educate people, because many of the things that our population needs is, they ask us often, why does the Ministry of Environment, why does it not conduct the environmental impact assessments? And we say that that is something that concerns the investor, and what the Ministry of Environment does is to define the reference and the criteria on which that study needs to be based, and then to assess whether or not it was thorough and robust enough. And that is the stage that adds value, because it is the integration and the interaction that you have between the technical teams at the ministry and the investors, so that the project can take place while minimizing environmental impact. Once that environmental permit is granted, you have the construction stage, and before you start those operations, when you build, when the construction stage is over, again the ministry needs to grant a permit so that we can have the operations ready to go. This clearance, this permit, is also relevant because in a way you've gone through all the previous stages, which is a forecast that is done, because the development of course has not been implemented yet. We're foreseeing this into the future, and then we need to discuss the commitments assumed by the investors according to the demands of the administration. So before you grant this permit, you need to verify it, and this is by decree, that the whole project has been installed pursuant to what the ministry has decided regarding installed capacity, layout, installation technologies, and environmental plans for its management. So only after that can the project start its operations, and that is a permit that needs to be renewed every 3 years. These are the steps that I was just mentioning in the flowchart. And this environmental impact assessment law comprises several activities, which include hydrogen production and PV plants, whether onshore or offshore. So which are the tools that we have as part of the projects? that have been already developed within the ministry for this roadmap? Well, we have specific guidelines to assess environmental impact in the development of wind farms and PV farms, also concerning the monitoring of birds and its impact on biodiversity, specifically regarding birds and bats in particular. This was already developed by the ministry in what we call in Uruguay this first energy transition during the implementation of all these projects. And now, of course, the challenge is to go over these guidelines in order to develop renewable energies in the direction of hydrogen production. And why is it necessary to go over this? Because the size of the wind farms that we have in Uruguay nowadays has a lower extent that hydrogen developments will have. So some environmental criteria need to be revised in order to guarantee a sustainable use of the territory and of its implementation. This is the scheme of the process that you need to go through to get that environmental permit. And once that the environmental impact study has been presented during the evaluation stage, there are two public participation stages, depending on the classification and the level of environmental impact. If it's a B classified project, then you have an instance that is making the public aware of this, and it's disseminated amidst the population, in particular to the community that is near the area of influence of that project, so that that community can submit any concerns that they may have for it to be assessed. And in C classified projects, the decree also says that you need to have a public hearing, a general public hearing, that will be open for anyone that is interested to raise any concerns. And these are mandatory stages that are described by the decree, and they need to take place before you get to the final technical assessment. So all of this needs to be taken into consideration, because that could give you inputs or concerns that have been disregarded during the assessment process, whether by the investor or the ministry, and it's then when you will reconsider them and reassess them. There is another very early stage, which is the communication stage of the project, that also needs to be made public so that the population knows what is going to be installed in their area of influence, what the impacts could be, and how they are intending to mitigate the environmental impact. And why am I stressing this? Because we know that in the roadmap, as Maria Jose was saying, it is also included within the strategic axis of work this issue of a dialogue with the citizenship. That roadmap was also submitted to public consultation, and here we're talking about specific projects and their consultations. So the roadmap was already put to public consultation. It's constantly being revised, and it's part of an open dialogue. But then when you get to a specific project, regardless of its size, whether it's big or small, when it's going to be installed in a specific location, it is then that you need to have again a consultation stage that will be specific to that project, not to the roadmap. So what about the competencies regarding the roadmap and the collaboration to promote hydrogen production and its derivatives? We are working with a consultancy company that was also funded by the GIZ, as Ursea said, and through the Ministry of Industry. And this consultancy is about how to develop the inputs to have an environmental impact guideline when it comes to hydrogen production. We have that already for PV and wind energy, and this is going to be an additional guideline. And what is good about it? Well, that it will set out clear conditions for investors and for those projects that will be developed. And at the same time, it will help us standardize all the elements and information that will be required by the administration, and to have a shared assessment process. This consultancy is being implemented, and in a couple of months, it will be completed and it's going to be available to the public. This guideline deals with things such as water consumption and other relevant issues that have to do with the use and installation of hydrogen. In parallel, we are signing a convention, an agreement with the University of the Republic, with the Institute of Fluid Mechanics, for also for water as a resource. After the water crisis, there was even more sensitivity around it, and we understood together with the Ministry of Industry that it was a strategic thing to do to have an approach from academia regarding water resources and consumption. And the idea of this consultancy process is to say, okay, what are the opportunities and the risks in the different areas and water sources and water availability in the country to produce hydrogen. If you saw the data that Maria Jose was sharing, the water consumption for other users, whether it's agriculture or for citizen use, hydrogen, green hydrogen, overall does not pose a risk for water consumption and availability. What these studies try to do is to say, okay, globally we do not have an issue, but still we need to identify when and how and what underground water sources or freshwater sources, whether it's going to be from the Uruguay River or from where it's going to be used, and to make sure that that is going to be that is not going to pose a serious risk. And that needs to be another input, another item to include in this strategic assessment for water consumption when it comes to production of hydrogen. Also, on a global scale and not so specific, we are trying to see how we can approach this roadmap as a strategic environmental report to see what the opportunities are from an environmental standpoint, what are the risks, where these projects should be developed, and to include, together with this roadmap, some recommendations for a strategic environmental approach to develop projects in different parts of the country. Of course, all the institutions that have been involved in coordinating this together with the Ministry of Industry, we are all working in internal capacity building, even though we have vast experience in impact assessments and water permits in Uruguay. Because long before this, we had the competency to grant water use permits, but we need to be specifically trained in what concerns hydrogen projects and hydrogen derivatives projects, its uses, its demands, and its impacts. That is what the technical teams working with different international corporations and training programs are working on. And more specifically, we have the Ministry of Environment that gave primary permit for one project, which is the Tambora project in the north of our country in the department of Tacuarembó and Paysandú, where the feasibility study was conducted. The ministry has already established the reference terms for the environmental impact assessment, and now the investor is working on that report to ask for that previous environmental clearance, and this is the one that has made most progress, and that is the counterpart of a pilot project that was also announced here. So we can say that things are on track regarding the roadmap and the project's implementation. We know that it's going to take its time, but we are trying to make it technically robust, giving the right guarantee so that projects can be developed in a sustainable way, trying to minimize impact. I would also like to highlight, because I talked a great deal about the territory, I would also like to highlight that we're working on offshore projects, working with ANCAP in all that concerns its offshore development.
Thank you very much to the panelists for your presentations, and now we will have our next panel And we would like to invite engineer Victor Emmer, consultant of the GIZ from Germany, for his PTX Hub International project, and engineer Cecilia Correa, a specialist of the Division of Energy of the IDB. And they will tell us about the advances on the knowledge agenda. We will start with Victor Emmer's presentation. Good afternoon, thank you. I will be talking about this study which is being carried out, which is the analysis of availability of CO2 for the production of derivatives of green hydrogen in Uruguay. First of all, I would like to say that this came up because of a need of the Ministry of Energy to expand the knowledge on the different aspects of this sector, this value chain of green hydrogen. And this study is being carried out, it's being funded by GIZ from Germany, and it's being done with a consultancy consortium, the group of energy markets, and the pilot plant of chemical engineering. They are from Argentina, and they have representation also here in Uruguay. And I understand that they are here in the room with us. I would like to start by highlighting the importance of CO2 in the value chain of green hydrogen, given that it's the source of carbon from which we will elaborate the derivatives as the fertilizers, synthetics, and there are two basic ways of obtaining that CO2 which is usable. The first one is by direct capture from the air, and the second one is from stationary sources. We will be talking about the second one in the study. An important thing to be considered is that the emissions of the derivatives will be neutral. They don't have the impact of global warming. And CO2 must come from biogenic sources, so they must be part of the short cycle of carbon, so that it's not considered as greenhouse emissions. Now let's look at the study. These are the objectives. First of all, we wanted to identify those sources of CO2 and what is the potential to be used in the elaboration of these derivatives. We also want to analyze the different technologies to capture and use CO2. And lastly, we want to have a case study for all of this to look at the economic feasibility, the technical and economic feasibility of this study of capturing CO2 and its use to produce derivatives. Looking now at the content of the results of the study, we have here the characterization of the sources of CO2. How do we find CO2 in these currents of gas, from where I'm going to capture it to use it? Here we have, in the last case, we have combustion of biomass, and the percentage of CO2 goes from 8 to 10%. This is a relatively low amount, and so it's a challenge in the technical sense to capture this. And of course, the possible contaminants that this may have of gases. Now, looking at the quantification of those sources of CO2, there's an established value by International Agency of Energy of 100 million tons of CO2 a year, which would be attractive to have that CO2 captured and used to prepare derivatives of hydrogen. And the study that we are carrying out, it expanded that minimum amount to 10,000 tons in order to have a better overview and also to identify possible associations of potential projects in order to share the process of capturing CO2 and its use. So how did we do our methodology for this quantification? An important thing to highlight from this study is that all the information, we were based on public information, secondary information, the national inventory of greenhouse emissions, the energy balance of the country, and the different sector analysis. We also had interviews with qualified people of the sector in order also to have that geo-reference and characterization and quantification of CO2. Here we have a map of Uruguay with the different sources that we have identified in the different sectors. Clearly we can see the pulp mills, but we have other places also. So we know that we have a greater supply for this. We also quantified 11.3 million tons a year of sources of CO2, of biogenic CO2, 10.8 biogenic, 0.5 non-biogenic avoidable, especially from the production of cement. The strategies to capture CO2, there are many. The consultancy is based on post-combustion. That's the second one you can see on the screen. There are other strategies like pre-combustion or oxy-combustion that would improve the conditions and characteristics of the current of gases and therefore the capturing process of CO2, but that would imply improved technologies, and so this won't be done. So what's the specific technology to capture CO2? Well, currently the technology that has the greatest development is the mines. This is a recirculation of mines, where it goes in the first column, the gas column that has CO2. It's absorbed in that mine solution, and then it goes to the second column where it's absorbed and we get the pure current of CO2. And it has a characteristic, which is that it has a lot of efficiency with regards to the capture of CO2. We use 90% of CO2. It's absorbed in the solution of mines, and we have a very pure current. So it's quite robust. Now, looking at the case study, this is still being developed. The consultancy has not finished yet. We have made quite a lot of progress, but it hasn't been finished yet. The case study is a hypothetical case of combustion of biomass, for example, for cogeneration of electric and thermal energy. Let's think about wood chips. Also, the concentration of CO2 would be from 10 to 12% and a temperature of 180 to 200 degrees Celsius. That's a typical value for this kind of a process. The technology, as we said before, it's the absorption of aminas after combustion. We have the ratio of capture, it's 90%, and CO2 captured is 0.237 MTA. And the case study, it has quite a lot of detail of the process of capture of CO2, but it also looks at the other stages, all the way till the production of methanol, which we have the production of hydrogen and methanol. Here we have the different values that we could obtain, the equivalents to these inputs and products. Here you can see the capture of CO2. Liquefaction and transportation is optional because it would be much better to have the production of hydrogen and derivatives, methanol in this case, together or close by to where we can generate CO2 and capture it in order not to have that extra process of liquefaction and transportation, which has greater costs and also technological challenges. I'm not going to go into detail with this. This is the technical feasibility assessment. Here we have a dimension of all the equipment. It's quite detailed for the capture of CO2, but we also have a general design for the process of production of methanol and hydrogen. So we have the whole chain here in this analysis. I'm not going into detail either with regards to economic feasibility, but we have the investment cost, maintenance cost for the capture of CO2, but also for the other parts of the chain, all the way to having some prices or the leveled price of CO2. We have nearly $74 per ton only for capture. If we add liquefaction and transportation, we could reach $100 per ton. And below you have a sensitivity analysis where you see the cost of hydrogen and CO2. There you can see the final cost of methanol. So it's not finished yet. The study hasn't been finished. We will continue having a sensitivity assessment to look at the different variables of the process of capturing CO2, which is what interests us the most for this consultancy, and other analysis that will be done. And to finish, I would like to tell you that, again, this is an ongoing study. It will be public, will be available to all. Hopefully by the end of the year, we will have the final report. It will be published. It will be published with other materials of hydrogen. Well, thank you very much.
Invitamos a pasar ahora al ingeniero.
Okay, now please, Cecilia Correa, Engineer Cecilia Correa, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here today, especially with this absolutely packed room. I was just remembering that in 2019 we had a hydrogen event here in Uruguay in the top floor of ANCAP, and I don't think that we had 1/4 of the people that we have today in this room, which clearly shows how this is becoming a very relevant and interesting issue, not only to the country but to the region. Today I wanted to present some preliminary results because the consultancy is still in process, but some results that seeks to give recommendations to implement the green hydrogen roadmap in Uruguay in a few aspects: capacity building, research and innovation, citizen participation, and the development of infrastructure. What we seek to do is to have recommendations based on analysis. First, a benchmarking in 4 countries, taking 2 countries of the region and 2 countries outside the region. So we considered Germany, Australia, Colombia, and Costa Rica, and then meetings with the main stakeholders of the hydrogen ecosystem in Uruguay. This consultancy process is being conducted together with Ariel Alvarez, also Marique Bach from the Competitivity and Innovation Department here in Uruguay as well. And so based on that benchmarking, and after several interviews with the different actors and the interinstitutional group in general, and then some specific actors, we even had interviews with academia, with Auder and other associated companies and other multilateral companies such as GIZ. So these are the main recommendations that emerged from that analysis, which of course is much more extensive. But I just wanted to briefly mention a few of them. So, going to capacity building, a first recommendation in that regard is to generate a training plan for the public administration. Nowadays, the public administration and its different institutions is being trained very independently, not in a coordinated fashion. We believe that we need to coordinate capacities and knowledge in a way that is shared between the institutions, and that by doing so you will reduce training costs and will promote a synergy. So we believe that having a more coordinated training program would be very beneficial for the country as a whole. A second point is focused on the design and implementation of training curricula concerning green hydrogen, especially with a technical university approach. And the recommendation is about something that we have already made progress in electromobility, which is to have a coordinating board that will bring together the technical and university education sectors, the private sector, which is so important because it will be the private sector that will give jobs to the people that are duly qualified, and then policymakers, everyone together at the table to conduct an analysis of the value chain to identify the profiles that will be required to develop the hydrogen economy. And then after you have defined these profiles, to establish these university curricula in a coordinated fashion with the different actors involved. Regarding the involvement of interested parties, we believe that the country is making progress in this sense. We are having communication campaigns in place, and the recommendations go in two different lines. First, workshops and communication campaigns. It's about promoting a transparent, active communication, and especially an early communication to the communities with workshops and raising awareness and speaking the language of lay people, not technical teams, something that every Uruguayan can understand when it comes to the benefits of green hydrogen and its derivatives for the country as a whole. And a specific example of this, and this is based on the communication campaign in Australia that was really good, that did precisely this, and they had some ad campaigns in the main media outlets such as the radio, television, and it was something that got to the whole of the citizenship. The second point is about having a green hydrogen roundtable, which is in the public sector, but also involving, and I understand that we will launch that very table in the private sector, but seeking to have a green hydrogen table that will bring together the private and the public sectors, which of course is going to promote the exchange of information to work on development plans and to share knowledge, and allows us to work together and the challenges that each actor identifies for their own area. And of course this promotes having all the objectives aligned. All the strategies that we analyzed talk about the relevance of having that link with the different sectors, the involvement of the private sector and policymakers. For example, the case of Germany, they have a national hydrogen board that is made up of experts from the scientific community, from the private sector and the civil society, and that they advise the government in hydrogen matters. And this is an example of that we saw in this benchmarking stage. Regarding research and innovation, well, we are talking about a national plan for research and development concerning green hydrogen. Of course, it's about research and innovation and how to improve productivity in the number of services and products that you can create and how to make them more competitive, while at the same time working on local capacity building, which is so relevant. The country has clearly made progress in several lines associated to research and development. Green hydrogen was included in the promotion areas of the Energy Fund. In 2022, the sectorial fund for green hydrogen was created, and now the first pilot project was awarded. So a lot of progress is being made, but there is still a lot to be done. This is still in its early stages, and some very specific recommendations, such as, for instance, having a portal where you can share information on the programs and incentives that will bring all the information together, going through the different deadlines that you have for the incentives when it comes to research and development, that will allow us to have deeper studies, which is something that is required by this issue of green hydrogen. Also seeking to build alliances with research centers to share experiences and innovation, research and innovation programs. And there are several studies and examples by different countries. For example, in Germany, they have excellent research programs. There is one project that is mentioned which precisely deals with developing further knowledge and research very closely with the private sector. I don't know if you can read that because it's a bit small, but regarding infrastructure, we thought that it was very important, and it positively caught our attention when we saw the infrastructure plan they have in Australia, which is published on their on the internet. Sorry, let me go back one slide. They truly assess what is the existing infrastructure and what will be required for different scenarios depending on the roadmap or the strategy, in this case Australia's strategy, and what the recommendations would be for Uruguay to make progress along these lines according to its roadmap, considering different scenarios and analyzing the infrastructure that will be required both for renewable energy generation as well as for hydrogen generation, transportation, logistics in general, things such as storage, port aspects, etc. And of course this allows for an optimal and coordinated development of the new infrastructures, and it allows us to understand better the investment and execution times that will be required for this hydrogen ecosystem to be developed. Also, another very valuable recommendation in most strategies that we have analyzed is the promotion of production poles for the use of green hydrogen. Germany, for instance, has several of these poles, some of them for renewable energies, but even Colombia puts this forth as the possibility to further develop some areas of the country and to have a positive social impact. These poles would help us to optimize the infrastructure both for production, transportation, and also logistics, and it allows us to generate synergies between the different companies and academia, and to also help in job development, which is such an important issue as well. And finally, regarding the legal and regulatory framework, we heard a lot about the advancements in regulations. Of course, we still need to make progress along these lines, which we've done so far, and also the aspect of certifications, which is another issue that we're working very closely with the government of Uruguay and other governments in the region to have a regional certification scheme, which is key in order to become exporters of hydrogen and to foster these synergies between the countries. The second point, which was already mentioned by Maria Jose, is the creation of this sole investment window for hydrogen, green hydrogen investments. That is also something that is being developed as we speak. And last, but far from least, we have what was said by Walter Berry, this aspect of assessing the opportunity for an act or a multi-party agreement that will give more political endorsement and stability to the development of green hydrogen in the country. I think that Uruguay itself is a good example of how to have a state energy policy and how it is possible to have a multi-party agreement that would allow us to position the country again in a very good spot to show the political stability and the possibilities and opportunities that we have in our country for future investment. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much to the second panel for your presentations. Now we will go on to our third panel. And we will see the progress from the state companies. And we would like to invite Engineer Jorge Ferreiro, Head of Hydrogen of Energy Transition of ANCAP, and Engineer Enrique Vigria, Head of Hydrogen of UTEF. We will start with the presentation of Engineer Ferreiro.
Bueno, buenas tardes, muchas gracias.
This presentation will be quite brief. I hope so. And the idea, this is the energy transition of ANCAP and implementing the roadmap. How can we go from the roadmap to specific and concrete projects? We have a great challenge to attract investments and to have projects implemented, but it's very difficult for hydrogen because of the situation of the industry. What do we need? First, we need to have a vision and a strong commitment that are aligned with the country's strategy, as said by Maria Jose. In Uruguay, we've had this from the first to the last member of our staff. We have this very strong commitment in our company. Also, we need to have specialized resources, human resources, that have a lot of experience. We also need to have industrial and logistic infrastructure. We need to have industrial experience because these are industrial projects, very highly complex projects, and if they have hydrogen, even better. We must design and implement attractive and competitive procedures for investors, and also we need to promote, and we need to have a very good promotion of this. Uruguay is very well known for football or soccer, and maybe for other things, but not so much regarding hydrogen. This is the vision from a very small refinery of ANCAP to a very sustainable company. So we see ourselves as catalyzers of this. Hydrogen and its derivatives are key in the transition of ANCAP towards a company of sustainable energy, low in carbon, that can be complemented from the beginning with biofuels. Here we have 4 main areas that complete this vision, and we will look at these in detail. When we talk about highly qualified human resources with experience, we have a dedicated management from last year. It's the energy transition management. We have 15 professionals. We have 2 doctors, 2 who are having their doctorate, and 13 have magister. We have 15 years of experience in all of these: design, elaboration of bases and models of contracts, international promotion, execution, monitoring, fiscalization of contracts, negotiation. We have the same economic and size and technical complexity than oil and gas, so this is very easily applied. And Alur has a lot of experience, which is complementary. It's the other part of production of clean fuels, that is the origin of raw materials, certification of raw materials. They operate agro-industrial plants, marketing all these products that you can see on the screen. And this is not something that will be done, it's something that has already been done. Alur has already exported biodiesel and other fuels, certified to very high markets such as the European Union. Here we have a map of Uruguay. We are showing you the assets of ANCAP for the energy transition in our country. There you can see the key components, where we have surface water in Rio de la Plata, Rio Uruguay, where we have CO2, biogenic or non-avoidable, bioethanol, Bella Unión and Paysandú. In the available, we have the cement companies, and where we have logistic infrastructure, where we have docks, where we have tanks to leverage the projects. And also below you can see La Teja, which is our exit point to the sea in Montevideo. This shows that we have key places like Paysandú, which is like a valley of hydrogen. And here we have all the components that we need, minimizing transportation and the risk of the projects. We also talk about industrial experience, including hydrogen. ANCAP has more than 90 years of experience. We have the molecules, and hydrogen and its derivatives are molecules, so this is our business for a very long time now. We have 18 plants that we operate. We produce hydrogen, we store it, we purify it, and we use it. We have a refinery that we have its own supply, and it also supplies other plants, and we have a surplus, which today we use in the thermal ovens. And what you can see on the screen is the battery of hydrogen that stores the hydrogen in the refinery. It's the only one that we have in Uruguay. There we store 1,000 kilograms of hydrogen at 150 bar. Also, we have the promotion. As we are not known, we have to become well known. So we participate and we present in more than 20 international events of oil and gas, energy transition, hydrogen, and offshore wind in 2023. In H2U offshore, we had more than 123 meetings with more than 76 companies, of which 15 have participated in the data room virtual. We had all kinds of presentations to key actors in the public and private sectors, including banks, investors, energy companies, and others. This wasn't that we had very good results. We started this in 2018. We coordinated our work with public and private companies. We also had the cooperation of multilateral organizations, the World Bank. We have a lot of support from GIZ, as we said before. So this is a very attractive portfolio of projects for the short, medium, and long term. The first one is the production of e-fuels in Paysandú. This is the main dimensions of the project. We have 2 gigawatts of renewables, 1 gigawatt of electrolysis, a production of 100,000 TPA of green hydrogen. And look at the volume of production. It's nearly 500,000 tons of methanol, which will be transformed into gasoline. I put this in tons, but Uruguay markets nearly 900,000 cubic meters of gasoline and another amount of gas oil. So it's nearly the Uruguayan scale. It's important to highlight that all of this that we have in our company allowed us to do this in record time. There you can see the dates. We started on December 26, 2022. That wasn't a good time to start. But February 13, we already had the terms of reference ready. And on June 8, after the assessment, we gave this project to Global GIF. And then we had the assessment of the interest. We had the terms of reference at the same time. We want to highlight the work done with GIF Inicio. And then we have the production of HVO SAF. These are fuels that are produced with lipids or oil sources, which Uruguay has because of its agriculture and livestock sectors. And then in the refinery, we're going to have a new unit where we combine that with hydrogen. We already have the refinery, as I said before, and we have a surplus of hydrogen. So this will allow us to produce SAF. It says renewables and other products. We have there the synergy where you can see under ANCAP we have the refinery, and then in those new processes we are receiving from the unit hydrogen, utilities, storage, and we send effluents and products. That's a synergy that is very good for the economy of the project. The feasibility project is being carried out, and we hope to finish it by February 2024. And this is our STAR project. It's a long-term project, and it says that today we import fossil fuels, but tomorrow we will be exporting our wind and our sun. We hope to, in 2023, ANCAP plans to have a tender for offshore areas so that energy companies can carry out feasibility studies. The resource, you know it already. Here we have some maps. One is from Wind Atlas. Look at the quality of the capacity of the wind. And the other one shows the potential study of a SMAP. And it is a very, very big resource, much bigger than we have onshore. In this model, we are giving full flexibility for development. And this is because, well, nothing is set yet. The market is immature, the technologies are immature, so the best thing that we can do in ANCAP is give flexibility regarding the scale of the project, the onshore electrolysis and offshore electrolysis, the product, and all of this project will be committed only at the end of the project. Nothing has to be given from day one. This is the evolution. We are still in the first stage, the promotion. When we finish with the company that is selected, we're talking about a 10-year project. The companies will be competing, and we will have incremental processes of greater investments. And if this becomes interesting for them, they will continue. Otherwise, they can just give it back and we will set it to a new round. But in the end, when we reach the final period, if it continues to be of interest to the company, then we will sign the development contract and we will present the final project. So again, this is 10 years, or it can be shorter if it can be done by the company. But I believe this is a time that is needed for the market. This is an imminent market, so we have to continue working on this. But we should do this in parallel because all of this takes a lot of time. So if we work on this in parallel, we will be saving time. And the areas which we wish to supply, look at this on the left. We didn't come up with this overnight. It took us some years to define this. So we minimize the interference with all the ecological priority areas. As you can see on the map below on your left, there you see the ecological priority areas. This is something that we have done with the Ministry of the Environment. But then there's another map where we minimize the interference with all other anthropic activities, traffic, maritime operations, fishing, submarine cables, etc. And we had expert advisory from the IFC and the World Bank. And they helped us a lot to define all of this. In the end, we reached these 4 areas that you can see there. That's what we're going to offer in the first round. Each of these areas is around 43 kilometers from the shore, and it doesn't affect our great economic activity, which is tourism. It's in an area of very shallow waters, less than 50 meters in depth, so it's very good technology to set it to the bottom. And there we have estimated potential for each area. The approximate surface is from 600 to 800 square kilometers, a minimum of 3 gigawatts, and an approximate production of 200,000 TPA of hydrogen. Each of these areas has double of all the renewable energy that we have installed in Uruguay today. So this allows us to have an advantage not only for renewable energy, but also for another. Because the other countries of South America, although they have a lot of wind, their continental platform is very small, so very close to the shore, they have very deep waters. So here we have a very wide area, very similar to the Sea of the North. We have also the ocean winds. This is just a story, something that touched my heart. We participated in the pilot project H24U, H2V for forestry trucks. You will be listening to this week. This is a project that started internally in ANCAP, and then it became much more convenient to give it to the Innovation and Research Agency of Uruguay. But we will be participating in the technical and expert committee, mostly to learn. And as conclusions, we see ourselves as protagonists and catalyzers of the implementation of the second energy transition, and we have a portfolio of projects with a diversity of contractors and developers of product scales and temporary horizons. There you can see 6 columns, the project, who's the contractor, the developer, the product, the scale of renewables, the scale of the product, and the estimated start of production. So this is what we're going to do in-house in ANCAP, HVO, SAF, ANCAP with Allure. The second one is with HIF Global, which has participation of ANCAP. And the last one is H2O Offshore. We also have the option to participate with ANCAP. And if you look at the scales, they have a very vast scale, and we also have the estimated time of start. And with this, I have finished. Thank you.
Invitamos a pasar al...
Okay, now we will have the next presentation.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, good evening. I was also part of that meeting that Cecilia mentioned earlier today, and seeing the number of people that we have in this room today is, well, amazing. So, as UTE, the Uruguayan utility company, we have participation in hydrogen. On this slide, you have 5 strategic axes of this new business model, and you can see then in any of them, hydrogen is a part of it, whether it's clients, regulation, corporate governance, culture and persons, and decarbonization. But in particular for us, it is in these 2 axes where you have the biggest share. So for us, hydrogen is contemplated in those 2 main axes, corporate governance and decarbonization, and what we also call the energy tri-dilemma, which is aspects of energy security and environmental sustainability. On the left, you can see that trilemma and its projection based on UTE's activities, in particular in energy security, the expansion of the grid, that we will talk a bit more about it later, and then clearly environmental sustainability. Hydrogen appears very prominently. So on the left you have, on the right you have the 2 main axes. The first one at UTE is to analyze the potential roles as an institution that UTE has regarding the national strategy with green hydrogen. UTE is a public utility company, and it's part of that national strategy. It's about identifying alternatives and opportunities for development. This is one of our main axes as UTE, and the second one is a hydrogen strategy within the framework of the new business of UTE, analyzing possible segments for participation. These would be the 2 main axes that our projects team is dealing with at the moment. Okay, what about the roles of UTE in this sense? The first one is participation or involvement in the interinstitutional group, in particular in the project that was just mentioned by Jorge about the pilot project. But not only that, UTE also is planning its own decarbonization and certification regarding the heavy transportation fleet at UTE, which is a big part of it. We do the maintenance of the whole distribution network, and we have a big heavy transportation area, and thermal energy generation, which is the backup energy generation for all the renewables that we have. The third point is to help with hydrogen developments, both for grid services in terms of transmission and distribution, as well as renewable energies. And that is where we have 111 years of experience. We have 111 years of promoting, transporting, transmitting, distributing energy. An energy that is internationally recognized as good quality energy. I slightly disagree with my good friend Jorge. We're not just known because of football, but also because of our energy transformation. Uruguay is in the international landscape because of its high renewables penetration. And I believe that that first transition had us at the forefront. In that sense, I would say, okay, we need to be suppliers and we need to help in this hydrogen chain. And in that sense, energy developments have a very high scale, and the correlation with the international grid, the international system, represents a big challenge, and it implies a substantial change in traditional schemes. So studying this in depth is one of the key roles of our team, but most importantly, our goal is to understand the needs of the developers and to provide them with solutions to make their projects a reality. We have 111 years of experience in providing energy, and what we want to do is to give solutions. And for this, we need to understand what developers need. So in the sense, the team at UTE seeks to strengthen our capacities and independence with our own developments and with international consulting. The aspect of training has been largely discussed today, and in particular just now by Cecilia and Jorge. And for us it's a key aspect. We are not a molecule company, we are an electron company, and we need to be duly trained. And there you have the four axes of training processes, the four main activities. Regarding international regulations of green hydrogen, both in terms of the economic aspect, which was very much discussed in the previous session concerning the gaps which we need to understand if we are to understand what developers need from us. And the other aspect is certification. We have renewable energies, and we need to see if we need to talk about the certification when it comes to green hydrogen. We also need to understand the production, storage and transportation of hydrogen and its derivatives, both concerning technological and environmental aspects, as well as business models and financial models. We need to understand this in order to provide good solutions to developers. We also need to understand the marketing perspectives for green hydrogen, both in the markets, in the sense of their demand and their location, and how these contracts, these agreements are going to work, because in a way they will be connected to energy contracts and agreements. And last, in order to achieve our decarbonization, we need to analyze the green thermal at UTE and to make progress in carbon neutrality. And this is a key aspect. We know the variability that wind energy entails, as well as PV, and we know that you need to have green backup. So that is another key aspect to us. So, well, in a nutshell, that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Bueno, y ahora para que nos presente una mirada más global, vamos a invitar a pasar.
And now to have a more global perspective, we will invite Mr. Luquese, President of the TCP of the International Energy Agency. Please, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias.
I apologize, I'm going to speak English. Maybe next time I'll speak Spanish, if you invite me again.
technology collaboration program of IEA. I am not IEA only. It's very important to notice. And as Maria José asked me, I want to make some closing remarks and to put the Uruguay strategy in the global context. Maria José, you mentioned a lot of things at the global level, so maybe my presentation will be shorter. And you know that we have a common goal in the planet to reduce to quite net zero this huge amount of CO2 emission. And for that, we need a lot of things. I like the scenario of IEA because this scenario said that we have to keep economic growth of 3% per year because the population will grow, because there is a lot of needs in the world for health, for human development. So we need economic growth. At the same time, we need to decarbonize, which is a huge challenge. And the first very challenging goal is to keep the consumption of energy at the same level of today, despite the gross product will be multiplied by 2.5. So we multiply the GDP by 2.5 and we keep the same level of energy consumption. It's a very huge challenge. And for that, so I translate in Spanish, it's a good starting point. For that, we need all the technologies, energy efficiency, energy intensity, all the renewables, nuclear, CCS, and direct air capture, electrification, hydrogen, smart grid, etc. But I want to underline 2 points. Maybe it will be linked with the Uruguay strategy. First, we need more research, development, and innovation. The technologies we will use in 2050 are for 60% mature today. We need to develop a new technology, and a small part of them we need in 2050 are at the laboratory scale today, you see. So we need more research, innovation, and development. Very important. I think it's also a point underlined by the former colleague, but I think it will be very important in Uruguay to develop also research, development, and innovation. And the second one is to develop the international collaboration. Very important. Why? So I will skip this one because it's not very new. Why? There was a very, very interesting study in 2022 or 21 showing that if we are in a case of very low level international collaboration, the net zero will be reached only in 2090. Why? Because, I will explain later, because there is a many reasons. For example, a very low level of international collaboration will increase the cost of technology. Just imagine in the less developed countries, the cost of capital is very high. And so the cost of technology are very high too. So we need to de-risk. It's not the energy transition is not only for 50 countries, it's for the 200 countries, and we need to have on board all the countries. And you can see, following a very interesting report on the breakthrough agenda, with the collaboration of IEA, IRENA, and United Nations, why we need international collaboration. There is many reasons. Of course, coordination of deployment, scale up, decrease the cost, collaborate on research and innovation, de-risk through international assistance and finance, incentive to create the demand, and of course, one very important topic for this coming years are the coordinated standards, including certification. So it's very important, and for example, Mission Innovation developed the concept of Hydrogen Valley. Of course, Hydrogen Valley exists in Europe, but the idea is how we can we can duplicate this model in the other country. In the country less developed, in Africa, in Asia, etc. Very important. So, of course, I think you mentioned the last map of the project. Very impressive. But maybe what is not so good is that about more than 1,000 projects, only 5% are on the final investment decision. That means that there is some issues not solved now. And there is too many issues we have to solve to stimulate the demand, because there is many projects, but the investor don't want to invest if they don't see contract by the consumer. And the second one are international standards and codes. So on international trade, it's also a report from IEA. If the energy transition succeeds, but it's not obvious because there is so many challenges and risk, like geopolitical risk also, critical material, the pace itself is a challenge. I think we will succeed at the end to the net zero, but to reach in 2050 is a very, very huge challenge. Okay, but if we succeed, you can see that the international trade of energy will be completely transformed from oil, gas, or natural gas today to critical material, lithium, copper, etc., for 50%. So it is a completely change of the international trade, and for 45% on hydrogen. Of course, there is a lot of maps like this one. I don't want to comment because nobody knows what's happened in the future. But it's true that the main consumption area will be Europe, China, North America, and Asia. The main, for me, because there are many priorities, but the most urgent priority for the next 3-4 years at the international level, because I don't speak about priorities in Europe, in South America, etc. I speak about the priorities for multilateral collaboration. One, to establish a framework for code on standard and certification. I will explain just after. And there will be some announcement in the COP28. Second, to stimulate the demand, because it's a weak point now. It's a weak point, so how to stimulate the demand with a coordination. And third, it's an increasing issue, how to establish a framework to get on board because you have more or less 50 countries with a national strategy, hydrogen national strategy. What about the others? And we have to also establish a very good framework for these countries in order the hydrogen transition will be not only for 50, 60 countries. Just to show you some example what we are trying to achieve in the international framework. In fact, the international collaboration is very complex, and the breakthrough agenda tries to coordinate the different initiatives like hydrogen TCP, IPHC, etc. And you can see that there is 4 priorities. The first one is very important, and it's a joint work we are carrying out between IPHC and my organization, Hydrogen TCP, to establish a program on the certification, on the methodology to count the carbon content. The second is how to stimulate the demand. The third is about the hydrogen valleys, and the last one is about the finance, so led by World Bank. For example, in my organization, we have a specific task on certification. So we are at the multilateral level, so above the European one, the Latin America, the Asia one, and we will try to establish a platform for mutual recognition of certification scheme. So it will be a 3 years, it will be recognized at the COP28, and we will have a strong support with IPHE to continue this work. So I think the link with Uruguay, I think, is very important to participate to international collaboration, to be present. It's the case you are present in the very recent Hydrogen Trade Forum, because there is 3 countries from South America. So I think it's a very good initiative. And once again, it's also to overcome this type of issues. And just to show you my organization with 26 countries, we expect many new countries from Latin America soon. And I think the other message is this platform is very interesting also for R&D and innovation collaboration, because we have certification, but we have many work on, for example, of course, safety, but underground storage, renewable production, natural hydrogen, very interesting topic, etc. We have many topics, and I think for the researcher, for industry, it's a very interesting forum to establish a network and to get aware of the state of the art at the world level. So to conclude, I think I am very impressed by the roadmap of Uruguay in terms of hydrogen. Very interesting, very coherent. I think we've focused on the final products, not only to produce hydrogen for hydrogen, but to produce hydrogen for derivative and to sell derivative, not to sell hydrogen, because hydrogen, if hydrogen is a commodity, it will be a very low value at the end. So making as much as possible final products, I don't know still, but because it's another topic, but I think it's better to sell low carbon steel than export hydrogen to Europe to make steel. But it's my opinion, it's not the opinion of national strategy. So I think it's a very good one, maybe to focus, to involve more in the international organization, but I know it's difficult because that requires a lot of effort, human resource, etc. But maybe combining effort with other countries could be a solution. And also, I want to insist, because I am part of a research institute, to develop more collaboration and to have a diversification of partnership too. Because international collaboration at the multilateral level is very stable. Bilateral collaboration could change from maybe in 3 years, 4 years. Some countries could decide to change the strategy. It's more, I think it's more reliable to have multiple bilateral partnership. And that, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Paul. Bueno, queremos agradecer nuevamente a todos los...
Okay, I would like to thank once again all the presenters for their very interesting presentations today. Especially thanks to you all for attending this event, which, as many of the presenters said, well, it's quite important. It's quite impressive to see so many people interested. We will take a few additional minutes of your time to announce the launching of the Uruguayan Hydrogen Association, and we will have Mr. Pablo Diaz.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Antes que nada, muchas gracias a todos.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. In particular, thanks to the Ministry and to Maria Jose Gonzalez for allowing me to have this space. For the last couple of months, several actors in the private sector have come together to try to unify our efforts and start working in a coordinated fashion in favor of developing this hydrogen economy and also promoting green hydrogen projects and making the projects that are already in place viable. So that's how the Uruguayan Hydrogen Association emerged, which is a network that is made up of associations and chambers in the country that bring together the main companies and the different actors that make up the value chain for green hydrogen. Part of the objectives are the ones that were mentioned before: to promote the green hydrogen economy, to promote and help in the development of these projects, as well as, of course, ensuring that the projects and investments that come to the country will find fertile soil to prosper and to make these investments stay and to promote further investments. Okay, about the founding members of the association, we have URDERT, which is the Uruguayan Association of Renewable Energies, the Construction Chamber of Uruguay, the Uruguayan Logistics Chamber, the Private Energy Generators of Uruguay, and the Chamber of Industries of Uruguay as well. These are the founding members, but also we have heard about the interest to participate in this association of the Uruguayan, German, Chamber of Industry, also the French counterpart and the Scandinavian counterpart, as well as different associations that have expressed their interest to become a part of this association. You may find it interesting that the main objectives that we have are these 7 that greatly overlap with the ones that have been mentioned so far today. In the main axis, we have the 3 main axes on which this association is working is: first, developing the market and fostering investments, trying to find investments and allowing them to stay in Uruguay and to prosper. Also working on regulations and norms to prevent these problems from happening and delaying any potential investment, which Maria Jose mentioned as part of their roadmap, and it's part of the recommendations of the IDB. And also, which is also interesting, how to work on the logistics and the use of common infrastructure to, in a way, leverage as much as we can the existing resources to allow these projects to happen while using the best that the country has to offer. But this needs to be based on the 4 pillars that we have at the bottom part of the screen. First, talent development, also dissemination and promotion so that we can have the support of the communities where these projects could take place, also research and development, needless to say, and also the use of technologies at an industrial level to promote local capacity building and also collaboration development. And speaking of collaboration, one of the things that we are requesting, and it's part of this presentation, it's basically what I'm going to wrap up with, is I'd like to make it public that we want to have this hydrogen table so that the different actors can get together and start working and contributing from the private sector, articulating our work with the private sector and academia to find the best paths so that we can all help in the development of these projects. Also, during this week, we will have meetings to put these work teams together that will work along these lines, and we will start working on a work plan for the association for the time to come, and especially for 2024. And finally, and I would like to make it public because we have a lot of people involved here present in this room, we would like to ask for this association to be incorporated to the Association of Associations of Latin America so as to promote regional work in terms of certifications and whether we call something green hydrogen, renewable hydrogen, blue hydrogen, see how we can start having some common language and we can start working together for the development of the region. We know that this is something that needs to be done in a coordinated fashion, and that it means that we will not only be having countries competing for investments, but regions will be competing as a whole, and what we can do as a region to draw investments to this side of the world. And finally, of course, this invitation is open to all the companies that through the different associations and chambers wish to take part in this, and the idea is that you can directly incorporate to the work team so that you can contribute with as much as you want. And that's what we wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, once again for your attention, for being with us tonight. Now we invite you to a cocktail outside this room. Thank you, everybody.